Okay, so this is a quick overview of the latest version of the Risk Mandate website, the AI, and the core idea here is to capture the risks that the agents are basically being given, creating by the privilege that they're given and the access that they're given, right? So the idea here, instead of just stopping at the vulnerability, we look at the mandate that are given, right, to even being able to execute that vulnerability, right? And the idea is to map the risk so clearly so that it becomes very easy to see who owns it and eventually who funds it, right? So we kind of play around with this UI, but the key here is that to instead of just capturing vulnerabilities, what we want to do is we want to capture who accepts the risk, who funds the risk, who owns the consequence, and what can it actually reach. Because in a way, what this allows us to do is allow us to really understand the impact of the particular risks that we have, the impact of the agents, and really go deep into actually who is going to be able to do something about it, who has the mandate, who's going to fund it, right? And that's very, very important, right? One of the tricks here that I use, one of the models here that I use for risk acceptance, right, is that in a way there's no deny button. So you can either, because it's already exists, right? So you can only accept it, right? Um, but it's basically, you could either do it, in a mode where you says, hey, I want to get more data, I want to, accept for a little bit, and then while we know more, or you actually want to do a project about it, right? And that's why there's an interval, right? And it's important that every risk that you have propagates all the way up to the board into all the key stakeholders, right? And and that's why when you accept it, if you really don't want the risk, then it's a catastrophic. It's about an hour, you have to revoke access immediately, right? That's the only option. If you say, oh, this is like, you need to do something about it very quickly, you need a P0, right? You need a team, security team to focus on it, etc. Same kind of day, with a day-ish, it has to immediately be injected into existing Spring. If it's kind of a week, it needs to be a project. If it's a month, you have a program, and if it's indeed 6 months, you defer it, right? Which is fine. You still accept it for that. So the question is, how do you view that risk? Once you accept it, right? How much do you want to do something about it right now? I guess that's the key point, right? And the other key concept here is that every time you give an agent what we call a mandate, right? That's the moment of authorization. That's the moment where the agent got the right to do the action, right? So not when he did it, not when he hallucinated, not when he do stuff. It's at that moment, and that's why we want to capture this. And then this is where we have the accountant, the person who's accountable to. We have the person who on the org chart is actually going to be responsible for, and then the scope of what we can do, and of course the expiry and all the risks connected to it. So we capture this, right? What is the mandate that is given, and that's the moment of authorization. That's very important. Now, all this stuff runs on top of the S graph and S vaults that have been created, so it's all client side or device side encrypted. The server doesn't hold any kind of the data. All this is kind of been working, the vaults, etc. So this is sort of on top of it, and it's also open source, right? So there's no lock-in, no risk, etc. And fundamentally, we also start to now create a risk acceptance maturity model, so you can start to track again what maturity you have, and of course, this is also fractal, and it's also multiple maturity models in the same organization. And the idea is that you need to capture, you need to understand the risks, because again, not every system needs to have the right level, the same level of maturity, right? So the maturity, again, of the risk acceptance is important, right? Because systems that are not mission critical can have less amount of what's it called, of risk acceptance maturity than others, and that's very important, right? Now, in terms of how we do it, because everything is open source, the logic here is that we have all these features and all these capabilities. The only difference is who runs it, right? So it's if it's free, if you run it yourself, you maintain it, you develop it. We provide a bunch of services that do this, which are token based, so you pay per usage, and we also have, from an enterprise point of view, we can support it. We can do monthly, billing. We can basically do maintain, so it runs on your infrastructure, right? And that's it, right? And I really like this sort of vision, which is what we're doing here is also what the business focus on, which is lower the probability of catastrophic outcomes. The problem is today, a lot of businesses are buying a lot more risk than they shouldn't, because they are actually increasing the probability of catastrophic outcomes by adding all these agents to their mix. And that's what we are trying to prevent.